Everyone eats out every day, but people don't think about how food arrives on the plate. This is Grounded, and I'm Lauren Mitchell. Join me as we delve deep into the challenges, expertise, and experiences of professionals and innovators in the food service industry. Grounded is powered by the Buyer's Edge Produce Division. Our mission is to provide innovative solutions and excellent service to food service operators.
Hi, it's Stephanie from Fresh from the Field. Over the last few weeks, we have experienced a lot of escalated markets and some quality challenges. As we get into the warmer summer days, we suggest getting with all cold chain suppliers and processes and make sure that cold chain SOPs are strictly followed. This will help ensure quality at its best. Produce Alliance does their due diligence to make sure our growers are following the correct SOPs. We put our own teams at our growers' facilities to ensure product is being cooled properly and the logistics is being handled properly as well. Over the next few weeks, we will have some updates on the forecasting of transition. Until then, tune in to our Fresh from the Field live updates and interviews on Twitter or Instagram.
Today's guest is a senior food service supply chain executive with over 30 years of experience. His main focus is on customer service, relationship building, setting high expectations and standards. He's an alumni of Darden Restaurants, RSI, the Cooperative for Burger King, and RSCS, the Cooperative for Yum Brands. He's also an NRA Supply Chain Executive Study Group Board member and CCR Supply Chain Committee member and Arby's Foundation Board member. President at ARCOP, the supply chain cooperative for Arby's, and pro pickleball player, David Cox. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. You had to throw that in there, huh? So just for background, I was on crutches last weekend during NRA because of a pickleball incident. So
yeah, so that's actually where I want to start. I got to meet you live in person last week at the Supply Chain Expert Exchange that goes on ahead of the NRA show. And I got to speaking with a few different category leaders for ARCOP, and they heard that I was going to be speaking with you. And I asked, well, what kind of questions would you ask David if you had him on a show like this? Out of them all, they were very clear about the culture that you've created there at ARCOP.
yeah.
And specifically, they said that there was, and I quote, no amount of money that they could be paid on top of what they make to leave ARCOP, just because of the people, the environment, and all that's by design of what you've done over there. So my first question is a simple one, which is talk to us about that special spirit that's there, and what have you specifically done in that environment where any motivated team member can truly thrive?
That is very humbling to hear. Certainly, but it's a little bit of the difference between working for a large corporation and being an SVP at a company department. The responsibility is the same, but at a co-op, you have the ability to kind of shape and drive the culture, among other things that you get involved in, like benefit packages and things like that. I thoroughly enjoyed the culture at Darden, and I also took bits and pieces from other places I was at, and I just had it in my mind. I want to create a place that I want to work for, it's like respect and all the things that you want, but also we've just got a good environment and a mix of individuals, and more than anything, it's. We've got stressful jobs. And so I've always just tried to keep it light, on team meetings, I'm kind of the wisecracker of the group, which, kind of sets the tone, for the team that, yeah, we've got an issue we've got to solve for. We've all got to dive in. We've all got to work hard and make it happen. But at the same time, nobody's going to die or anything. So, let's have fun. And my adage is maybe not so much anymore with the onset of COVID and working from home, but there was a time there where we spent so much more time with our coworkers than we did our families or our significant others. And so I've just always approached it, if you're not enjoying the culture and you're not enjoying what you're doing, then, go somewhere else. And so I just always wanted to create a culture that people would want to be, part of.
They mentioned a phrase, and I'm pretty sure it came from you, but it was growing, growing, gone.
That can mean a lot of different things. My my take on that is generally most people want to grow in their careers, and they want to grow, and just don't want to be doing the same thing. So whether it's at RCOP or whether it's somewhere else, growing, growing, gone is, you need to continue to grow as an individual, whether it's in your current category or getting experiences elsewhere. And that's what I talk to the folks about a lot. Like, you'll get folks coming to you and that says, "Hey, what do I got to do to get a promotion?" Well, it's not that easy because there's so many factors into that, especially, being a smaller organization. There's only so many director levels. There's only so many senior manager levels, that kind of thing. And so it's, it's if you tell them, then maybe you're not really being all that truthful, because I don't know what the business is going to do 6 months from now. I don't know if we're going to have to scale back, some budgets. I don't know who's going to leave or not leave, and so what we've always tried to do, if and when somebody leaves, we try to take that open position and reassess the entire team, and hopefully turn that into promotion opportunities for 3 or 4 different people, just based on that one move, right? As you move different folks around. And so I tell them, don't worry about the salary. Don't worry about, your title. Don't worry about anything. Just go out there and grab as much experience as you can, because when you do that, your resume is going to look really impressive. You're going to be more valuable to the company you're currently working for. And quite honestly, you're going to be more valuable to some other company. And so that's kind of the growing, growing, gone. I took at least 3 or 4 different lateral moves in my career because I saw an opportunity. I never dealt with packaging before, and I never bought packaging before, and the packaging buyer left, and it was the same level I was at. And so I inquired about it, just so that I could learn the category. Was it easy? Was it, did it put you in an uncomfortable position? Yeah, it does. But um, I can't say enough for garnering as much experience as you can, because then the rest of this stuff comes. Then the money comes, the titles, the promotions, the job opportunities.
And we were standing at a little round table, over the Chicago waterfront. And it was Mackenzie who's over, she said, bakery and seasoning, and Ray. And then, I've been over the fresh produce category for the bulk of my career, but that's basically supply chain at its finest. You got someone from distribution and logistics at the other end of the table there. So when we talk about supply chain, we are talking about the management of goods from end to end. And for those that are listening, you've heard the word RCOP. Okay, what is RCOP and how does it relate to Arby's? So to break it down, they've served as essentially the cooperative for Arby's since 1978. And the membership for RCOP is comprised of both franchise and company-owned restaurants. And what they do is they utilize their system volume across all of the restaurants to negotiate with suppliers and distributors to establish the pricing, but also ensure the continuity of the supply. So together, you could say they manage over 1.5 or so billion in spend for food, packaging, beverages, distribution, capital assets, small wares, energy, and service programs. So David has been, responsible for overseeing all of this and the experts within that. My questions following now are kind of be, more focused on supply chain, but recognizing your expertise in just business leadership in general. So feel free to kind of answer them using both the experience lanes.
Yep.
What key principle exists at your core to drive decision-making that's been, part of your success?
It's really hard to just, pin it down to one principle that exists. But if I had to put one at the top, it would probably be living the golden rule each and every day. We are being in supply chain, we're in the relationship business. And the minute you start treating business associates, suppliers, distributors, coworkers, whatever, not by that guiding principle, is when you're going to start, running into challenges long term. So, I think that's critical and core as to kind of how you want to be treated is how you should treat others. And I went through the Covey, and the strongest one was seek first to understand before being understood. And that one stuck with me at a very early age. I mean, I've always been a listener. I think I've always tried to be a listener first before I would talk and kind of assess the situation and figure out how I can add input. But that's important. There's often too many times people are always thinking about their response, and they're not fully listening to what they're responding to, right? So that's a big one. Um, Integrity, never compromise your integrity. Nobody can take that away from you. Once you do, you're heading down a bad path. And I mentioned it before. One of my core principles is to have fun.
Mhm.
You know, we work hard, we work long hours, we do all that. And again, if you're not enjoying yourself, then you should probably go find something else to do. And the way to do that is to have fun and to tease team members and to have happy hours and all those kinds of things to make sure that people aren't too stressed out. And the last one is really centered around communication. What I've learned through the years, and more so in later years, is you can pretty much tie any issue or concern or challenge back to communication. And that, either that's what created the issue, or you haven't helped diffuse the issue. But whether it's just, you cannot over communicate. You just have to communicate, figure out why this topic is important, who's it important to, and then make sure that you're um, communicating properly and timely and all those kinds of things.
Yeah. So I heard a couple things there. One, listen closely. Two, you can't over communicate. I think that's so true in this business. Communication is huge and a guiding principle. Now, specifically when interviewing for people to come in, how do you communicate and what is your nature around that? So important. And then three, just relationships. You've spoken about challenges already, but it's those relationships that we really lean into during challenges of any sort, daily, weekly, or, within a market. So, I love that golden rule as well. To take us back to when you first started with RCOP, and this interesting story that I love and really appreciate hearing is when you went to the board and said, "Hey, I need an increase in the budget. And I'll guarantee you that the return on cost savings will be 10 times as much." Such a bold move. You asked very simply, can you make this investment? Talk to us a little bit about what that involved and what the result was.
I've been president of RCOP for 18 years, and um, I was 42 at the job at the time when I took the job, and that might sound impressive, but RCOP wasn't what it was 18 years ago. It was a very small organization. We had 13 people. We had um, we had no systems. We didn't have the right people. It was really almost, even though RCOP is the first supply chain cooperative in our industry, it was created in 1978. Even though RCOP had been around a very long time, it was just very much of a nuts and bolts kind of purchasing organization. And so when I walked in, the budget wasn't where it needed to be. Not even close, even though they were making the investment in myself, and they had just hired two new VPs, and they were starting to make the investment because the business environment had changed, and we started doing monthly LTOs, and from a supply chain perspective, we weren't equipped to support that. And so and then at the same time, being a procurement organization, you're always focused, and the mindset's always on efficiency and spending less dollars. And so the board's mindset was there. And it was also a bit of a cultural issue with the board because they didn't want to go to the membership and say we had to raise our fees,
Mhm. Yeah.
And so I had all these challenges. I knew coming from Darden what was possible and what we could do in all these other areas. I mean, we weren't supporting indirect sourcing. We weren't doing anything with logistics. We weren't managing obsolete inventory properly. We weren't doing any kind of forecasting on promotions. There were a lot of things that we weren't doing. And then, oh, by the way, we didn't have nearly enough resources applied against buying. And so I knew there was a lot of opportunity. And so I took, I just went to the board and I said, look, I know our sourcing fee is going to go up, but if we can go to the membership and say, our sourcing fee is going to go up $200,000. And at the time that was, two buyers all in with benefits and everything. I guarantee I'll bring you 2 million in savings that'll flow, to the food cost line. Do you want to make that investment? And so obviously that would be an easy decision for anybody to make. And the board made that easy decision. Although, the fear of the response was nothing like, what the actual response was. Everybody's like, yeah, that sounds great. And so, and then as we moved forward, every time we approached the board, we did it from an ROI standpoint. And it was just always a big part of the discussion. And, they're very appropriate from a board perspective on making sure that we were spending our budget dollars wisely. But at the same time, we were taking some significant dollars out of the supply chain. So it was an easy decision. So, the funding that was used over the time, certainly went towards staff expansion. But it also went towards technology. We brought on a third-party logistics, a 3PL years ago. We utilize a variety of different commodity consulting experts to help us make those kinds of decisions. So with all those expansions in the business, again, it was always tied to an ROI, and we, without exception, we were able to make that 10-to-1 payoff, usually significantly more.
There you go. It's a call to invest in your category managers and sourcing individuals. I just love that. And also just when approaching the board, always with an ROI standpoint. I think that's very important. Okay, let's talk disruptions and challenges. What disruption, in your opinion, is creating the greatest opportunity in our industry today?
Putting COVID aside, we all, lived it and dealt with it. And it wasn't, if you're anywhere part of, in the supply chain, your last couple of years has not been a lot of fun. But I think, beyond that, the one that is popping up frequently right now is, cyber ransom security issues. We've had 3 or 4 that have impacted the supply chain just in the last month and a half. And, it's amazing. I mean, technology is a wonderful thing, and it's moving so fast, but at the same time, you better have a great backup plan, and you better have a repetitive system out there somewhere, and you better be able to make that switch quickly, or it can bring your entire supply chain to a halt. We've seen it with some distributors. We've seen it with suppliers. We've seen it with some internal ordering systems and payroll systems. And yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I don't, that's probably what I'm worried most about right now. I mean, we've seen the impact. We've been able to work through it all, but there's going to be a time where it's going to be a big one, and it's going to bring us to our knees.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing too is no one's immune from it. That's what's so scary. So,
Yeah.
okay. Well, going back to when you started your career and where we're at today, you've touched on technology for a moment there, but what specifically do you believe to be the greatest improvement specifically for the supply chain industry?
Well, it's got to be technology. I mean, when I think about when I first started many years ago, the lack of visibility was there. Just the fact that we can have a peek at, an instantaneous peek into where everything is, at what point in the supply chain, for the most part. The farm to fork thing, not quite there all the way back to the farm and some of the produce we are, but not necessarily in some of the other areas. But, we have, certainly through technology providers like Aerostream and some of the other things that we do, we have pretty good visibility, and to be, to make the best possible decisions we can in the heat of a promotion. You need instant data, and, to make that assessment. And, even when I started at ARCOP, the distributors were faxing in inventory levels of what they had on order, and, things like that. I mean, it was crazy, but that's what you did. I mean, nobody, really had the availability to that kind of data. Without question, technology is moving so fast that eventually we're gonna be able to, sell a roast beef sandwich, and, the farmer's gonna have another calf to support it, and see the change in demand. So
I love it. Customer of choice. This is a term that came from you. Talk to me about what that means and how it relates to relationships with your suppliers.
yeah, I think it really goes back to kind of that golden rule philosophy. How do you how do you push it, into your management of suppliers and distributors? We did set it up as part of our culture a long time ago. I talked about a little bit about how our cop was kind of a green visor, rubber mallet mentality, and would beat suppliers over the head. And, that's fine. That'll work for an RFP or two. But at some point, the supplier is going to choose not to do business with you. And they may not bid on an RFP, or they may not aggressively bid on an RFP. So you get down the road, and you really are not going to have competitive pricing when half of the supplier base, won't do business with you. And the ones that will might not be the best suppliers. Right. So, it's fostering relationships. It's human nature to want to work with folks that collaboratively work with you. Right. And folks that will treat you with respect. And so the philosophy's always been, from a long-term perspective, eventually you're going to end up with the strongest suppliers, because most everybody's going to want to do business with you. And then you can narrow it down to those suppliers. And, the best suppliers are going to be the most efficient suppliers, which means they're going to be cost competitive. And then at the same time, they're going to provide great, strong service. They're going to be a great long-term partner. When you do have issues, they're going to jump in and help you out. And then they're also, if they're the best suppliers, they're going to provide consistent quality over time. So, and it takes a while. It takes a while, because that was kind of a philosophy we had at Darden. And when I came to ARCOP, not necessarily knowing what the culture was, it took us kind of 3 or 4 years in the industry for the supplier base to realize that we were, walking the talk. And it took a long time. I didn't get it at first. I was like, well, I told you we're going to do this. And they didn't believe it, because it was RCOP that would change, volume from year to year on a quarter of a penny, because that was the most competitive RFP thing. And, that doesn't help anybody. Certainly doesn't help the suppliers to not know whether they're going to have the business the following year. So it's just back to treating people right. And I will tell you that those relationships we leaned into extremely hard during COVID. And I will also tell you that at least it felt like we were getting preferential treatment versus other brands as a result of it.
Wow. It's so powerful. All right. So we deal with challenges every day here in the Wild Wild West of specifically fresh produce, but really supply chain in general. Can you think of a way that a problem was solved for you in any aspect that you still remember?
I can think of one during COVID. We had a real challenge with our roast beef. There's a raw material component called 100 Visual Lean in our product that is it's 100% visual lean. So it's a very high quality lean product that was in a large percentage of our formula. And as a result of the lack of labor, you have to take 90s and turn it into hundreds by hand trimming. With the lack of labor throughout the industry, the production of hundreds fell off the cliff. So as a result, the market went way up.
Mm.
So the initial inflation that we've all seen and felt the last year, it hit us very early, hit us towards the end of 2020 because of the labor challenges. So we quickly regrouped, um, and utilization with RCOP, with the brand, with Inspire, with um, product development, commercialization, QA, everybody, and really very quickly tried to figure out a way to, the goal was to improve the product, but create a lesser dependency on hunter visual lead.
Mm.
And that's exactly what we did. We created a new formula that was preferred by the consumer. Believe me, we did extensive testing, and at a significantly lower cost. And so that's a a great example of a huge challenge because you know it's such a big part of our menu when you know um, roast beef goes up 20, 30, 40 cents a pound. Um, that hurts us very hard because of our spend in that category. And so it was great to collectively have a team around figuring out how to reduce the cost and improve the product.
That's so interesting. I was talking to Charlie on another show about how he had a spec with a large shrimp, and essentially through the supply gap, they had access to larger or smaller sizing, and they essentially discovered how to fuse two of them together, which wound up being a solution not only in the short term, but they wound up using for the long term, believe it or
Yeah,
not.
yeah,
It's just fascinating the way that we can maneuver through ingredients and how these situations kind of force us to think outside the box, I think is
yep,
always a silver lining of these challenges.
exactly right.
Yeah.
You know,
All right. And then, with the pandemic, we hear a lot about the challenges navigating. And in specific, I'd love to hear more about, how it impacted from your perspective, your marketing team and what you saw, from beginning to end at the start there, what it looked like versus how they had been experienced to doing their jobs and, how you guys navigated the pandemic from there.
yeah, it was interesting. So our sales were up a significant amount. So even with running out of some products here or there that most likely impacted sales to a certain degree. But I will tell you, before COVID, I think there were two instances where in the previous 15 years where we had to go to marketing and say we got to change the marketing calendar because I can't support
Mm.
X. One of them was Turkey because of bird flu in 2014. And, so it was unusual circumstance, but usually when you only have, maybe a problem here or there at a time, there was always a solution. Somebody else always had capacity or somebody else, you had availability somewhere and you had a team that could quickly create an option that would support the marketing calendar. Then when COVID hit, obviously nobody had capacity. We had multiple issues every single week. And just about on a weekly basis, I would go to marketing and say, nope, you can't promote roast beef in the next 4 weeks. It's just that extra 10% will kill us, kind of thing. And so we literally had to go to marketing 100 times in 2 years and change the marketing calendar because we couldn't support it, which is just a crazy foreign idea, for sure. And then it kind of turned at one point and it turned into more questions like, well, what can we promote? And, and sometimes I would say, we got nothing, we're just going to have to, you know, we were still up in sales. So the pressure wasn't, you know, drastic or horrible, but, it was like, the universe had twisted, because, and it's funny because when I go back to Darden, when I got to Darden, was in the mid 90s and they were really they had gotten big at that point and had, just become public and all that. And so, but there was an old mindset in the procurement group that back in the 80s, when they were growing so fast, they would just go out and buy like seafood in Asia and come back and tell marketing, okay, you got to come up with a shrimp promotion because we just bought 10 million pounds. So it was uh, a weird time, that purchasing was kind of controlling the marketing calendar. And so we had to, early on in my tenure at Darden, we had to kind of change that philosophy and help them understand that, supply chain is a support function to the brand and the support function to the marketing calendar. And you've got to go figure out what they want to do. And, and that's the way it's always been until, summer of 2020, when it reversed again. And I kept having to walk into the CMO's office with my tail between my legs. So
Yeah. We talk a lot about just the relationship between marketing and sourcing, and just not getting too far above our skis, or having to walk back in with your tail between, just trying to make sure the balance is always there.
yeah, I mean, we're a support function. We're an operations group, and we're not there. I mean, we're there to support sales, and to be able to, or to have to go in and have any negative impact on sales isn't where anybody wants to be.
All right. Well, I knew this conversation would go fast, and we're starting to wind down here, but I've got a few final questions.
Yeah.
You know, you're winding down your career. What are you looking to do next? What excites you about the future? Will you stay close to supply chain, and in what way?
No, I don't exactly know what it's going to end up looking like, but here's my plan right now. I'm going to stay very, very connected with the NRA supply chain executive, or expert exchange, I think we call it now. I've been on the board since the inception, when David Parsley and a couple others of us got together and started working with Don Sweeney at the NRA to bring the study group back together. And it's been great. It is truly the only a conference in our industry that's solely focused on supply chain, and provides a network opportunity for all of us. And for me, selfishly, it was extremely valuable, because at some point in time, during the RCOP journey, we had pretty much done everything we knew how to do. And now we're sitting around looking at each other going, well, what's next? How are we going to get better? And so I've been able to utilize that group to really, just pick up the phone at any time and say, hey, Eve, hey, Charlie, what are you guys doing about X, or
Mm.
here's what I'm thinking, what's going on in a certain industry, what are your thoughts? And so it's been great. I know all my counterparts very well in the industry. And so, part of me, I just can't let that go. These folks are great friends and associates over the years, and it's such a great industry. I want to stay involved, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to continue to stay on the board, more in an advisory capacity, and then I do plan to do some advising, and not necessarily consulting. That sounds like way too much work, but
Fair enough.
I think my goal is to kind of stay busy in the industry for about 30 or 40% of my time. And then the other part, just doing retirement stuff and travel and golf and what have you.
Yeah. So what Dave has just spoken about, I mean, it is very special relationships in that room with the National Restaurant Association. If any of you listening are curious to learn more, I mean, even from a sponsorship perspective, and then to be on the board as a sponsor or an operator, reach out to Christy Kingery. That's Kkingery at tropicalsmoothie.com. She is the president of the board, and just a phenomenal human being as it is. But it's really a great opportunity to gather. I mean, I sat at a round table with a gentleman from Payway, and then of course Jeff from Airstream, and a few other individuals. So you've got category leads, VPs of supply chain, data, and we're all problem solving around compensation structure, how to infuse equity, and inclusion into your workspace. I mean, these are really interesting topics to roundtable. And then they meet in a larger format, twice a year ahead of the conference. So it's a great group. How about what do you believe to be the greatest need in our industry today?
For years, it was recognition of how important supply chain is to any business.
Hmm.
I don't think we have to tote that message anymore. I think COVID made it very clear to everybody of how important it is. I think even in the last 5, 10 years, finally supply chain had a table in or an office in the C-suite, and which has come a long way from years ago. But um, boy, I I think it's really around collaboration around technology. Whether it's GS1. I mean, our industry from a technology standpoint, when you compare it against retail or you compare it against other industries, we're living in the 70s with some of this stuff. And there's just always been a hesitancy to collaborate and really make things happen more from the perspective of what's best for the industry as opposed to what's best for me as a distributor, what's best for me as an operator, what's best for me as a supplier. Um, you know, we've just got to put all that aside and figure out what's best for the industry because ultimately that'll be best for all of us. Um, and I've seen it through the years, and it's been the issue from day one, and it really hasn't changed all that much, unfortunately.
All right. So here's a few rapid fire questions. Um, what we love to ask at the end of the show in spirit of our title, Grounded. What's a daily habit besides having fun that helps keep you grounded?
I usually hit the pool, swim laps, um, probably most days, and it gives me energy for the day, but it also, clears my head. I mean, it's kind of like, people always have good ideas in the shower when you're just kind of there and swimming laps, your mind drifts and you think about a lot of things. And what I do need to do is I need to embed some notepad that works in the water because I'll have great ideas in the pool and I'll get out of the pool and I'm like, I know I was thinking of a great idea and I can't remember. But it's my peaceful, quiet time. And oh, by the way, you're exercising and trying to be healthy. So that's good.
I share the same, except for me, it's not swimming laps, it's running down a trail. I mean, it's where I can best think. I get kind of in a meditative pace but I carry a vest with me so that I can carry my phone in my pocket because I do get ideas frequently or a solution
Yeah.
to a problem. But the problem is I'm stubborn and I won't stop to write the note down. I try and just do it as I continue my run. So I'll come back home and read my notes app and there's letters where there's not, so then I can barely articulate it sometimes. I'm like, if I would just hit pause on my watch and throw down
Right.
the note. Okay. How about a strategy that you use in your workday that saves you the most time?
I think just staying organized and focused on key priorities. Have some kind of method, whether it's, Microsoft Notes or something, but you know, you have to stay focused on the key priorities that's going to make the business better, more efficient, whatever the case is. The challenge is this is it, especially been true in the last 2 years is you get sucked into the day to day and then you go down this day to day rabbit hole of challenges and you're solving for and you're making things happen and all that other stuff gets pushed to the side for periods of time. And so, just carving out time to really focus on what's important, key priorities to keep that going. Because if you keep theoretically, it's going to make your day to day easier or better, right? And so if you just keep pushing that kind of stuff down the road, the day to day is just going to consume you.
How about to the next generation of supply chain or procurement professionals? What's your best secret that you're willing to share?
Well, I'll touch on, the grown, gone concept. Just keep grabbing experience. That's a big one. Never stop learning, especially in today's world of technology that's moving so fast. And maybe the third thing is change. Change is going to happen whether you like it or not. And generally people don't like change. But you don't have a choice. Things are going to change. So you might as well embrace it and go with it and figure out how you're going to adapt to it.
How about mentors? Who's been a mentor for you and in what way?
Oh, I would say I have a number, but I'll call out Barry Millett. Barry hired me back in the day at the KFC co-op, and I was in finance at the time and looking to get out. And so he kind of, early on, he took me under his wing and taught me commodity analysis and hedging. And with my financial background, it was a good fit. And I wanted to get more on the operations side. So, he gave me a shot. And then, I also worked for him at RSI. He went to RSI and told me he was going to get me to move to Miami. And I told him I wasn't moving to Miami. And then 4 months later, I was moving to Miami. But, he was very good at pushing me into roles that I didn't think I was ready for. He knew I would eventually figure it out, but I was very uncomfortable with it because in my mind, I didn't think I was ready for that, next level or that role. And what it taught me and what stuck with me was, just developing, the confidence in myself, to really, go push myself to do more than what I originally had back when I was 25.
How about Mary Jo? What role did she have in your career?
So my wife, Mary Jo, is an engineer and an MBA, and I got to phrase this right, has not worked outside the home since our 32-year-old was one. She's a big part of the success that I've had in my career because she managed the house and I managed the career, and I never envisioned she allowed me to solely focus on a career. And when the weekends came around, we didn't have to run errands. We didn't have to go grocery shopping or pick up the dry cleaning. She had all that done and we could actually have some good family time on the weekends, so that was great. And then she, our youngest was 17 in high school and he was getting ready to go away to college. And I told her she either needed to find a hobby or a job. Otherwise she's going to drive us both nuts. And so I bought her she used to do some photography. The boys played a lot of travel sports and stuff. And so she did, photography for that. And she was like a creative memories consultant and did scrapbooking and what have you. But, so I bought her this Groupon coupon for a photography class. I was like, well, you should get into photography, Well, that was the worst Groupon in the history of mankind because it has cost me so much money. So she's taken this rather seriously. She has become a wildlife photographer. We travel
cool.
the world, take, mostly bears, but, grizzlies and polar bears. We're going to see polar bears again in June, north of Norway. We've done gorillas in Uganda and tigers in India, and it's been quite the ride. It's fun for me because I'll do any of them once. I don't need to do them twice, but to have the experience of an animal like that in their natural habitat and the power of an animal like that it's a rush. It's crazy, but so yeah, she's been very actively involved in that. She sells some stuff, but at some point my accountant's going to, he told me at some point the IRS is going to come to us and say, this is not a business. It's a hobby. Knock off all these deductions.
Okay, last question.
Yeah.
Staple produce item for a burger.
I don't know. Can I say pickles? I mean, it starts as
Everyone says pickles. Everyone says pickles.
I gotta have pickles on a burger. My burger build is cheese, ketchup, raw onion, extra pickles, maybe some leaf lettuce, and occasionally a fried egg.
Oh my gosh. I'm telling you, I have had, I think, 12 guests interviewed now, and I'd say I have a 90% hit rate with pickles. And it's been a new add in my burger life because now it's always said that way. Well, I can't live without them. I'm like, well, geez. So now I'm on this pickle kick. There's a lot of different things you can do with pickles and different seasonings. So it can take it many different directions.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, David, you are, as everyone says, a legend. And I can see, I mean, just great conversation and there's so much to learn from you. So I really appreciate you giving me the time. Where can people find you if they've got a question or perhaps something that's come up as a result of our conversation they want to learn more about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to have a new work. I guess people can't see me do quotes with my fingers on the podcast. I'm going to have a new work email. It's cox.david.d@icloud.com. And certainly feel free to reach out. Like I said, I'm going to stay active and involved and have some fun and really so looking forward to it for sure.
We'll make sure to include your email in the show notes.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys for listening. If you learned something today or laughed, please tell someone about this podcast, Grounded. It's been another exciting episode, and I will see you soon. And that wraps up another episode. We have covered a lot of ground today. Thank you for joining. For show notes and our most updated market report, visit us at groundedthepod.com. Grounded is powered by the Buyer's Edge Produce Division. Our mission is to provide innovative solutions and excellent service to food service operators by leveraging technology, talent, and an insatiable appetite to improve.